A year ago, and we all got really sad. I'm so sorry. I have never had it. It's not fun. No. I'm sure it's a.
Peter gonna be here?
Yes,
In person or online?
in person. He's already stopped by the city once.
Secretary of State, is that what that means?
Didn't know. I think that means that you won the science fair.
It's not SF? It's
I
SS?
remember getting one of those stickers when the science fair day again.
Yeah. That's the city of Fairfield, city.
Yes. 15.
Over at sea.
Everybody needs a suit. You ready, Chad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, February.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay. December 4th, 2024 City Council meeting for the city of Gerhardt's called to order. We will now have the oath of office.
All right, we have. Where would you like me to start?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, we'll pick the pile here. We'll welcome back Ms. Alana Cochran.
All right,
All right, so I'll come over to you, Ms. Alana.
am I gonna stand?
You will, and you're welcome to raise your right hand if you like. Go this way.
That's right.
Okay, so I, Alana Cochran,
I, Paulina Cochran,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Oregon
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
for the city of Gerhardt,
for the city of Gerhardt,
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself in position 2
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself as Counselor Position 2
for the city of Gerhardt,
for the city of Gerhardt,
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
All right. Welcome, Ms. And go to ladies first, Ms. Sharon. Stand over here, pardon me, Mayor. Sure. All right, I, Sharon Popper,
I, Sharon Pfeffer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
for the city of Oregon, for the city of Gerhardt.
for the city of Gerhardt,
We're not quite there yet.
Gerhardt, Oregon,
And that I will faithfully and honorably
and that I will faithfully and honorably
conduct myself in position 4
conduct myself as Counselor Position 4
for this city of Gerhardt,
for the city of Gerhardt,
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
Excellent.
And Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. All right. I, Carrie Smith,
I, Kerry Smith,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
and the charter, ordinances, and rules of procedures
for the city of Gerhart,
for the city of Gerhart,
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself as mayor
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself as mayor
for the city of Gerhart,
for the city of Gerhart,
to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
city of Gerhart, to which I have been elected to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I will notarize your documents after. I need to notarize.
Absolutely.
Not, you have to sign my book, but we can do it.
You want them passed in, signed, not signed?
I signed
It
it.
doesn't matter, we can do it.
Okay.
Two. Four.
All right. Moving on to the planning commission interviews. Everyone has a list of the questions. The thing I don't have is a list of the interviewees. Do you do? It's in the back of the packet?
Because it's the last time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I never looked at the back of the packet. I thought that's council rules. I'll get there, people. No. Planning commission appointment. I have nothing with it. Thank you. Good. All right. These are all new, right?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Stephen Rose? Yep. Okay, how do you want to do this, Chad? Have them sit in front of us and. Sure. All right, we have 5 questions and we have 5 counselors. So what we're going to do is ask each and every interviewee the same question, starting with Preston Devereaux asking the first question.
Okay, do you believe that the comprehensive plan as written is still applicable? And does it need to be changed? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think it's a living document. I think it's survived a lot of time in the city of Gerhart. I've been a property owner in Gerhart since '90, and I've been around since '88. So I've been around a long time. And I think that there are some changes or modifications, maybe some amendments. Specifically, I'm concerned that residential development and commercial development are coupled together. I think it would be worth a while to investigate a commercial amendment or specific commercial plan to our main street, because it is really important to Gerhart. And I think, you know, it's shown that it's in a little bit of trouble right now, and that concerns me.
Thank you. Chairman.
What are your thoughts for now and near future for Gerhart? Please be as specific as possible and address Gerhart maintaining its residential community feel. Or would you prefer additional commercial and tourist growth and how they pertain to the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so my kids grew up here. They used to walk down to the market and get candy and bring back a sandwich. I don't envision Gerhart being an attraction to tourism. I think when razor clams are plentiful, I think there will be a fair amount of tourism coming to harvest razor clams. And when there's a parade, specifically 4th of July, I think there'll be an attraction, especially with free hot dogs, for people to come from outside to visit the city of Gerhart. I However, that said, I think again, focused on the commercial side, I think that the residents and housing is clearly increased since I started coming here in '88. And I think we need to consider that our Main Street can support the residents of Gearhart. And so I hope that that doesn't translate to more tourism. But I think that tourists will come, whether they're here to stay in a hotel, to play golf, to eat at a restaurant, or whatever, they will come. But to specifically attract tourism vis-a-vis some of the things that go on in Seaside, I would be against.
Okay. Paulina, will you read number 3 first?
How do you see your role as a planning commission member in city government? Describe your understanding of the relationship and interaction between the planning commission and the city council.
Yeah, so I see it as an advisory body to do due diligence on any proposals or requests that could either be ground up or come down from city council.
Thank you.
Dana?
So are you aware of any present or future conflict of interest you might have as a member of the planning commission? And if a situation should arise, would you excuse yourself from voting?
Yeah, full disclosure, I am an investor, silent investor in the Drift Haven. So if there became a need to step back and to recuse, if there was ever an issue relative to that, I was asked to recuse myself, I would have no issue. Other than that, my interest, long-term and short-term interest, is in the vitality of this city.
And I want to say thank you for applying. I want to say thank you to everybody who applied for this important
Sure.
position. Thank you for stepping up to serve us.
Okay, Stephen, do you, as a candidate for the planning commission, have a question of any of the members of the city council?
What are you all looking for in a candidate for planning commissioner? Or commission, sorry.
Wow. I'm looking for someone who believes in the comprehensive plan. I do believe there is a chance to modify certain parts of it because of it being 30 years old. And I would like to see someone that is committed to keeping the idea of a rural, small town feel for Gearhart. That's what I'm looking for as far as a commissioner. And I think this question shouldn't come at the end. I think this should be one of the first ones, because now I've given you an idea of what I expect. And that's kind of hard for you to answer because you've asked me the question. So anyway, anyone else?
I would say I'm looking for somebody who's fair and thoughtful. And I think what your heart really needs from anybody who steps up to serve is somebody who does long-term planning as well as short-term planning, that we're always keeping our eye on the eventual, repercussions of any short-term decisions we make right now.
Yes.
I would add in, that I would hope that the person would weigh all sides of a question and, ask some questions about what they're thinking about and what's up before the planning commission, and keeping an open mind while they're looking at all sides of it.
I think for me, can't disagree with anything anybody said, but I think the comp plan is a living document. It is updated as we change zoning ordinance. It is often updated. And I think that's for me, the most legitimate way to keep that document, a living document, is as we work on other projects that are tied back to the comp plan as it stands.
Preston?
Yeah, I think, you've got longevity in the community, so. You've been here for 40 years or better.
34, I think.
the early eighties.
90s, sorry.
So anyway, I think that, you know, you've been around the way that your heart works, the way that your heart thinks. The comprehensive plan definitely is a living document, so. I think that the past commissioners on the planning commission have done a very good job about, you know, keeping this as basically a rural, family-friendly town. So I would hope that it continues.
Good. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
All right. Next up will be Gregory Bush. All right, so Dana, why don't you start off with number one?
Okay, I'm number one. Do you believe that the comprehensive plan is still applicable? Does it need to be changed? And if so, how?
Yeah, just to start off with, just to introduce myself, and if that's okay, and Greg Bush, my wife and I moved here over 8 years ago, and we've been homeowners since, and we fell in love with Gearhart. I was career Coast Guard, retired as a Coast Guard commander. We've lived on the East Coast, West Coast, 9 different states, many different communities, had a chance to serve in a number of different positions, also had experience working in city government as well. I served in Juneau Docks and Harbors Board up in Juneau, Alaska for 5 years. I was the chair for a couple of years as well. So I had a chance to see how that worked in that environment. I'm currently serving as the assistant director for National Marine Fisheries Service Office of Law Enforcement. And I have 6 months left in my tenure before I retire. And so I look at this as being an opportunity to serve the community. And that's what I really look forward to I think that's really important. I bring a perspective of seeing a lot of different communities. And my wife and I are committed and love this area and plan to be here till we die. So we're vested. In terms of the comprehensive plan, if it's still applicable, yes, it is. I think it is a living document. It provides the goals and objectives that feed into the zoning ordinance, and that's what I see as the planning commission's main tool, main resource, and what they have to follow and basically make decisions by. In terms of, does it need changing? That's a tough question for me because I really only I haven't taken the time to really study it and compare it to the ordinances that are in effect and think about what changes should happen. I think that'll happen over time. As I have an opportunity to go through the ordinance, the zoning ordinance and see where there's conflicts, I can identify those and bring those forward. I think there's a couple things I can bring up now that I will, but it'd be in terms of real change. I think it's going to be something that will be more minor, and it's going to be driven by outside forces. So I see right now we have some of the FEMA floodplain and critical habitat designations that may drive and necessitate change within the comprehensive plan. We also still have within the plan it's okay to refer to my notes. It says we have in there that there's a prohibition regarding the development of essential functions and special occupancies within the L tsunami inundation zone. And my understanding is we're within that zone right here. And we're looking at the fire and police station rebuild. So we have a prohibition in our comprehensive plan that's contrary to what our current actions are. So that's a change that would have to happen. Something that I think is very simple to do and will be impactful is giving the city staff the authority to make simple changes, non-substantive changes to the formatting and spelling. There are a lot of errors that detract from the plan. So if I'm a citizen looking at the plan and I see just basic formatting inconsistencies and corrections that could be made very simply, I would recommend the council just direct the staff to make those changes, update the plan. So even missing a letter T in or looking at the added numbers at the bottom of the notes that just detract from it. And that's, I think a lot of complaints that come up are based on that.
Good.
Lina, would you do?
Yeah. What are your thoughts for now in the near future of Gerhart? Be as specific as possible and address Gerhart maintaining its residential community feel, or would you prefer additional commercial and tourist growth? And how they would pertain to the comp plan?
The rural, semi-rural nature of Gerhart is what really drove us to fall in love with it. And we like that it's a residential community. We supported Matt Brown in his efforts to become mayor, and we're fully supportive of restricting the number of rental homes that were allowed. We had in our neighborhood, there were several rental homes that were there, and it was a little bit troubling with people that were coming in, and to have it restricted to a set number, make sure we're family oriented. I think that really is what Gerhart's all about. We're trying to make it a community where we support the residents as the first priority. That said, I think that we have a lot of opportunity primarily along Highway 101 to promote and develop additional commercial opportunities. And there may be some conflict with comprehensive plan, because I think that's an area you could look to support broader outside the Gerhart community. Also tourists that are in the area, and I'm thinking more in lines of restaurants and other, not necessarily a park or some of the activities you see down in Seaside, but something that would cater and draw in some of the folks outside of just Gerhart itself. In terms of the downtown area here, the residential commercial area, this is the gem of Gerhart, and it really is something that we need to support as best we can. One of the challenges, though, is that there's only so much that we can do as the city, with the city administration. It really has to do with the businesses that come in, and are they coming in with a good business plan that is supportable and encourages year-round use and success. There's been, I have my own personal concerns, but something with, I should say, with catering maybe to a clientele that there's not as many of them as they may think, and the taste may be different than what they may think that this community can support. One thing that maybe we'll look at here within the Planning Commission and the City Council is the sewage, and being able to develop something that can support more than what we currently have available here in the downtown area.
Okay. Sarah?
How do you see your role as planning commission member and city government? Describe your understanding of the relationship and interaction between the planning commission and city council.
Well, the main thing is that I see as a member of the planning commission is to be a thorough and thoughtful and objective evaluator of the applications and the decisions that we're being asked to make. So I want to make sure that I would go in with an open mind and try to do the best that I can for the city and be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and in particular with the zoning ordinance. The relationship that I see in my understanding is there's the three levels that are outlined within the zoning ordinance, where you have administrative that the city takes care of in terms of permitting. Then you have the quasi judicial decisions that the planning commission makes with some of the zone changes, conditional use permits and things like that. And then the legislative decision, which is here. So you get the chance, you're basically driving the ordinances and making the ordinances, making the laws and regulations that go into effect and are applied before. But then within those three levels, every appeal takes a step up. There's appeal to a permit that goes from the city up to the planning commission. There's appeal to a decision of the planning commission, then it gets heard by the city council. So I see that as the relationships. It's a cooperative tiered system depending on what is being requested and what the decision is.
Thank you. Preston, report.
Are you aware of any present or future conflicts of interest you might have as a member of the planning commission? If a situation should arise, would you excuse yourself from voting?
Yeah, I currently have no known conflict of interest. I'm a federal fisheries enforcement officer, so if anybody here takes action against a marine mammal or an endangered species, I may have some some issue or concern with it, but there's no conflict of interest, and I've had our ethics department check to ensure that there was nothing that was taking place with the city that I had to be concerned with. And when I retire, then I have no job affiliation that could be a conflict. And I certainly have no problem stepping back and not being a voting member for any decision that should I have any concern with.
Do you, as a candidate for the planning commission, have a question of any of the members of the city council?
I think more as a whole, one of the questions I have is, have there been any recent decisions by the planning commission that you think have been in conflict with the comprehensive plan? And if so, what was the concern?
I cannot say that I've had any. I know Virginia does a very good job of following that.
Yeah, so far I respect the decisions that they make. I think that they are well thought out, and whether everybody agrees with them or not. Yeah, I mean, that's just par for the course in a community like this where everybody's engaged and has an opinion about everything. But I, not for a moment do I doubt their dedication and their commitment to trying to come to the right answer.
I would agree with that. I haven't always agreed with their decisions. But I think we've got some very well-intentioned people with very good minds and visions.
I think you got that ahead of the planning commission, that runs a very tight ship. She's not in this picture.
Okay. Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you.
Next up, and I am sorry, it says right at the top of my form here. All applicants should be prepared for a brief opening statement, and I missed that in my anxiousness to get sworn in. I guess I was just skipping through things. All right, so next up is Emerson Fisher, please. A brief opening statement.
By way of opening statement, my name is Emerson Fisher. I live at 750 B Street in Gerhart. We purchased the house in 2013, moved here permanently mid-2018. Prior to that, though, I've had experience from my neighbor in Portland would let us use their beach house on Marion, and that was the quid pro quo for our taking care of their dog when they were on vacation. And we'd come down here on Labor Day weekend with my brother-in-law and his wife, and we have this rousing intra-family golf game. And the loser of whom had to post the Dead Chicken Award, which is a rubber chicken on a plaque. And it said, to the worst putters and worst chippers. They had to post that in a prominent place in their home for a year. So I love the golf course. I love the town. I love being able to walk to certain businesses. I love being able to just walk the beach. The beach is extraordinary. And I would hope that if I'm appointed to the planning commission, that we could keep it this way for future generations. This is like some of the things that we talked about at the firehouse meeting last night. What would you like to have as an end product that future generations could either look at the firehouse or look at your heart and say, God, what a wonderful.
All right, thank you. All right, Preston, why don't you do number one again, please?
Do you believe that the comprehensive plan as written is still applicable? Does it need to be changed? If so, how?
Well, first I'll say that I've read it. And it is quite thorough. And no, I do not think it certainly needs any major changes. There are provisions in it that should circumstances arrive, it could be amended. I noticed some grammatical errors, as I know members of the city council have mentioned, possibly some spelling errors that can be changed, certainly not changing substance. I did have a couple of questions, though, a few things that jumped out. One, there was a section in there dealing with the school district. Now, I don't know if that comprehensive plan was built when Gerhart School was actually the Gerhart School District, or if it was part of Seaside at the time that that plan was developed. But the way I read it, I couldn't tell whether they were talking about an existing school district or they're talking about cooperating with Seaside about bus stops for kids being picked up. So I think that could be clarified. It doesn't need to be changed. And the other thing that I would like to see clarified would be the definition or the distinction between commercial development and tourism. I like the businesses that we have downtown. I like to be able to do business with them. The store, if Pacific Way was still open, and I hope it does reopen, and the new daughter's wine shop, I'm not sure can survive without business from folks that do not live in Gerhart. And I would not necessarily consider those folks tourists. If someone comes down to Seaside and spends all day at their carousel or on their beaches, and before they go home, they want to come and have a nice meal at the Pacific Way Cafe, I'm all for that. I'm against building a Ferris wheel in Leslie Moore Park or putting in bumper rides, but you know, the market, the apothecary, the new wine shop, and even McMinimans has to have some outside business to be able to survive. And I think the plan could clarify that, maybe. And I don't know what the council thinks on that, but we've got a small population here. We've got about 1,500 voters. And to have a store or some restaurants move through the winter without some outside business somewhere, I think is a real stretch.
Thank you. Sure.
How do you see your role as planning commission member and city government? Describe your understanding of the relationship and interaction between planning commission and city council.
Well, my understanding is that it's primarily for lack of a better term, an advisory board. And that occasionally, city staff may ask questions of the planning commission. I think my past work as an administrative law judge would be helpful to the planning commission to make an initial decision. And the work I had done as a staff attorney for the Workers' Compensation Board, I think is relevant also. In that position, a staff attorney would take an appeal of a decision of an administrative law judge, go over the record. So you're looking at transcripts, you're looking at documents, you're looking at the order, and you're reading the briefs of the attorneys, and then you're writing a draft order for the Workers' Compensation Board itself, who then either affirms, reverses, or sends it back for additional questions. But you're writing a proposed order for the board. And in this case, the city council is sort of like the board. And planning commission is kind of a combination of the staff attorney and the ALJ, as far as I would look at it.
Thank you. Now, we had a skip, so would you?
What are your thoughts for now and the near future of Gerhart? Be as specific as possible and address Gerhart maintaining its residential community feel. Or would you prefer additional commercial and tourist growth and how they pertain to the comp plan?
I think most of that is sort of covered in my opening statement, but I love Gerhart as it is. Would I like to see one or two extra businesses? I probably would. But I wouldn't want to see any more than that. I like to be able to walk around the neighborhood. I absolutely love the golf course. It's doggone near perfect. And Gerhart is one of the few places on the coast where the downtown core is not Highway 101. And that's an extremely nice thing to have. I realize Manzanita doesn't have that either, but most of the other coastal towns do. And it's really nice that you can get out and walk around in your streets, particularly your main downtown street.
And
So are you aware of any present or future conflict of interest you might have as a member of the planning commission? And if the situation should arise, would you excuse yourself from voting?
The sure answer is no and yes. And I did on occasion recuse myself when I was an ALJ. I'd even go so far as my daughter-in-law is a labor delivery nurse. So if I had a case involving a hospital and they were obviously the employer, I would, of course, most of the attorneys knew it, but I would say, look, if this makes your client or you uncomfortable, I'll get another judge to hear the case.
thank you, Emerson.
Thank you.
Okay,
Last one is, does he have any questions for us? Do you have any questions for us?
Well, I have,
thank you.
Sorry.
I have one, but it doesn't necessarily involve the planning commission. Is there any word on post office?
We don't get a lot of official reports
I
from the
understand
post
that.
office itself. But I have reliable information that they had a fairly decent sized list of people that were interested in stepping up and taking over. So I'm touching bases with them and I'm not even close to being worried about it yet. If we're not getting more information by next month, yeah, I'll start to be a little bit worried,
Yeah,
but right now I'm not in worry mode.
Time's starting to run out. Is it January 1st?
It's the end of January. Yeah,
Okay,
it's the end of January. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
great.
Any other questions for anyone?
No.
Okay, Susan Elliott's going to be not here. She's withdrawn her application. So this is the end of the interviews. Thank you for catching that question, Dana.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's all right. So now we're gonna move on. Is there any declaration of conflict of interest from any counselors?
No.
Okay, I'll take a motion for the regular meeting minutes for Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. Anyone have any corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from the city council meeting on Wednesday, November 6th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain.
Thank you. I will get to that eventually sometime, but thank you anyway. All right, so they're approved 4-0, one abstain. Moving on to the planning commission minutes. Everyone's got a copy in their packet, I believe. So we'll move on. Mayor's report. I went to the FFA meeting last night. I had positive and negative reports from individuals in it that attended it. It was very well done. I enjoyed it. I didn't find any surprises, but I didn't go away feeling like I knew everything that they were talking about. So it was good. It was informative. And that's about all I'm going to report on. Council reports, Preston.
I don't have any report. The clock group is and FFA is doing just exactly what we asked them.
Okay. Sharon? Oh, I'm sorry. Happy birthday, Sharon.
Oh, happy birthday.
birthday.
I'm sorry.
Happy
I
birthday.
should have done that at the beginning of the meeting, but
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday.
Sharon.
Happy birthday to you.
I was told not to do that, so that's why I
There's an acid word called sidewash. He just sidewashed you.
did it.
That sounds like a challenge that was accepted.
Yes, okay, so go ahead with your report.
Okay, I went to the town hall last night and, I thought it was great, honestly. I mean, I was a little hesitant about the breaking out into small groups thing, because sometimes that can go really well and sometimes it can be, I don't know. But it worked out really well, I thought. I mean, at least in my group, it worked out really well. We had some really good ideas and observations and the architect who led our group and asked us questions took a lot of notes. So I don't know, I thought it was pretty productive. I also went to the airport committee meeting a couple weeks ago and I don't have anything new to report about that.
Okay, well, I don't wanna badmouth the meeting last night, because I was asked to excuse myself from my group because I was mayor. They had a conflict with the fact that I'm a resident of this town, but I'm mayor, so they didn't want my input to overshadow what they were saying. That's why I had a little hurt feeling. Anyway, Paulina, you're not reporting, but Damon.
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to start off with my usual shout outs, and this month it goes to everybody who's put up the great holiday decorations. Murphy's consistently put up that tree, and you always know what season it is when that tree goes up. But they're not the only ones around town, so I encourage everybody to drive around town. And Seaside Chamber of Commerce is again this year doing their Seaside Light tour, where you can contact the Seaside Chamber of Commerce and get a list of homes in our community and in Seaside's community that have holiday lights up that if you want to drive by and take a look at. And there's also a competition. Had a lot of discussions with citizens about septic systems, learning a lot about septic systems that I didn't know, some scary stuff, and some things that we probably will need to look at in the near future. At this moment, I've referred the investigations over to the city staff and I'm waiting for their report. Also had discussions with citizens about public safety building. Completed the board of directors questionnaire for our financial audit. At least two, it might have been 3 meetings for the PSB town hall preparation. I lost track at some point. It seemed like we were constantly having meetings just preparing for the town hall. And again, thank you to everybody that showed up last night. I was really, really excited to see the people that showed up and were engaged last night. I was a little sad to see people that were not engaged last night that just were saying that we were demanding things that we have not made any demands. I think if you were in the town hall and really engaged in the town hall last night, you learned that nobody has asked for anything at this point. What we're really asking is for the citizens to tell us what you want. And so I thought that was a little unfair, and I have to say that. Signed up for the League of Oregon City Days in the city capitol in January. Made some inquiries into post office contract situation. And again, I already told you I'm not worried yet. But this is part of the course with the United States Post Office. They don't really engage with us very well. And then also I noticed in our packet that we're missing the email from Stuart Schultz. It wasn't included in the packet. So I would like to make sure that it gets included for at least the next time.
Yeah, we'll get that in there. It wasn't sent to me, so I didn't have it on my radar with Krista being gone, it was missed, so we do have a copy of it. I just need to get that into the packet.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the counselors, did you receive that?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, we received the email. Okay. I would like to make sure that he wanted it on the record, so it needs to go on the record. And then, some other stuff that you and I discussed that you'll bring up in your mayor's report.
Or the administrative report?
Thank you.
And I need to go.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Paulina, just, since it's a counselor's report, yes, you may.
Counselor.
I know that.
I want to say thank you to the 683 people who gave me their votes and put me in this chair. I have met with Chad, had a little orientation to what's going on in the city. I attended the PSB,
Did I say it wrong?
project meeting, no, I wrote it
Oh,
down.
okay, oh.
I have fire, crossed it out, safety, building project meeting.
Yeah, well, it's still be determined that the citizens are gonna tell us what it is, but.
Right. I am still a CERT member for the city of Gerhart. It's a county CERT team now, although we were meeting at 6 o'clock tonight. And I'm happy to be on the council with 2 other ladies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeez. Okay. Outnumbered. Chief Gregory, please come and help us out here with a report.
Good evening. So first off, I'd like to say I appreciate everyone that showed up to the public safety building, town hall. I hope that we have good attendance through the next 3 and really want to hear what the community has to say. And have them build what they think. So I'm very appreciative of that. Stats, we're behind on stats today. And with Chrissy being gone, we're gonna get them turned in, so you will get stats. I can tell you, I did a quick look over where we are last year, knowing that we're coming at the end of the year now, just out of curiosity to see where we are. Taking case files and what we call light entry items, which aren't case files, but it's actionable items, combining those, we're over 250 calls more than we were this time last year. Some of that is self-initiated activity. We have another officer. He's a young officer, he's a go-getter. We appreciate that. More traffic stops, more things going on. So some of that can be attributed to that, but we are getting busier and we're working hard to keep Gerhart safe. The last thing, I do appreciate your guys' approval for the rifle mounts in our vehicles. I watched the video later and when it was posted, and I believe that Sergeant Brown gave a good explanation of why we need the rifles and the importance of the mounts in the vehicles. So thank you very much. Okay.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Chief. Are you taking Como's place?
I am,
Come on up.
all right. Do you want me to touch on this now or just?
What?
It's.
It's just your report.
Okay,
Oh,
Wait a minute.
happy birthday, Josh Como.
yes,
No.
it's Josh Como's birthday today, yes.
Happy birthday to you.
Yours?
No, Chief,
Yeah, didn't I just say that?
The other chief,
Oh,
The other
good. All right, Chief.
the other Josh. Happy birthday to
We're
you.
confused.
yes.
Okay.
So again, we're also behind on our stats. I just finished inputting them today. My apologies on that. I can tell you we had 25 calls this week alone. So that's a pretty steady number. We also want to send our thanks to everyone that showed up last night. I felt it was really productive. I had also good and bad feedback, which is good, right? You can't help somebody if you don't get the bad feedback, and you can't get the bad if you get the good. So that was really beneficial. I don't think there's anything else really to report on that.
Okay, Chief Park, thank you very much for that informative report.
Sorry.
That's all right. Master of money.
So November is a really important financial month for us because it's when the city's properties tax is primarily collected and distributed from the county. And at this point, collections appear to be a little bit lower than I had anticipated. Would have preferred it to be just a couple percentage points higher. But it's still strong and not alarming. I will follow up in a couple of weeks, probably mid-December, with the county, just to see what the actual collection rate is, to see how they're doing countywide and feel like if we're on target or not on target. The city also received $16,400 in the reimbursement grant revenue for the sports court restriping project. So we had paid for the project already this year when they restriped the tennis and baseball courts. And then we received the $16,400 back from the state parks grant that we had received this last month. In expenditures, the fire department has approved 2 interns, so reimbursement stipends are now being charged to the 10-13-65. Which is to help defray travel and other incurred expenses for the students while they're participating in a program with the college. The planning department has continued to need additional support just with a kind of time-consuming projects this year, more than we had anticipated. So we have had some labor-intensive projects come up, like the Pick'em and the tree ordinance, had a couple more meetings and required some more staff reports and the BLI reviews. So we will watch that. We're already at 78% of that budget. So we just wanna not budget for a particular line item for city planner. But there, at this point, that budget line is okay. We're still at 48%, which is where we like to see it at this point. So we're just gonna keep tracking that a little bit. With the consensus of the city council on spending the federal ARPA funds last month, eligible expenditures have been moved from 71,7199, improving water, to 71,7190, which is just the grant line item. The Public Works Director has been working diligently on spending or obligating all those federal funds by the December 31st deadline. At this point, as of today, I think we have 30,000 left to be spent, and he has a couple of ideas. He has to have that money obligated by December 31st. So I don't think we'll have any problem there hitting that, meeting that timeline. In January, the city will be advertising for a new budget committee member to fill Councilor Cochran's position, because you were a budget committee member, but you're still going to be a budget committee member, so we'll have a vacant position there. And we also have 3 committee members' terms that are ending in May of 2025. So hopefully current committee members will still be interested in continuing that. Some of them have some other city projects, so I don't know if they were, but it's nice to have some longevity on there. So hopefully they might be still interested in serving in that capacity. Every even numbered year, PERS, our retirement system, publishes actuarial validation reports for every PERS participating employer. And these reports are calculated and created by PERS consulting actuarial companies. So each individual city has to pay for it, but they use a company, well, you can't use a company that PERS hires to do actuarial reports. So those reports are created, and they are a demonstration of the financial health of the PERS system and presents actuarial estimates of the system-wide liabilities and expenses of PERS, which include both pension and the retiree medical benefits. That report is out, and I'll be sending it to all the counselors, and with a document that kind of goes through and tells you what you should be looking at if you're interested. I'll also post it on our website. It won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but the underlying fact is that the overall takeaway is that the city of Gerhardt's rates will increase between 2.4% and 5.9% July 1. So just by clicking one day from June 30 to July 1, we will see an increase in those rates, and that is on all employer salaries. So it can be a significant amount, and I think you will, as the budgeting cycle comes across the state of Oregon, hear more and more about impacts of PERS. So I'll send the report. You're welcome to look through it, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine, for that information. All right. Let's go to Peter Wells.
Well, a few things. We talk a lot about the Portland state population numbers and how that impacts our share of state funds, as well as federal funds, because the legislature used Portland state's numbers to, rather than the federal census numbers. So we received notice that they are revising our numbers down. They needed to reduce the state of Oregon's population by 50,000 people. And they did about 10,000 from the city of Portland and then 40,000 others from throughout the state. We do not agree with their methodology. If anything, we think that their number was too low. The trends that staff are seeing and that I think all of us are hearing about is that a lot of people that had a second home in Gerhart are now making that their primary home because they're at retirement age or because of quality of life issues, many reasons. So what's called our vacancy rate, which in 2010, 45% of the houses were the primary residence and 55% of the houses were secondary homes. That went up to 50% in 2020, so increased by 5%, so it was 50-50. We think that's continuing to happen. I am drafting our letter of objection now to Portland State. Between Portland State University's student population, which is down by over 5,000 students from 2019, in Concordia, which had students of 5,100 and no longer exists, that's 10,000 right there. And the Portland School District's enrollment, Portland Public Schools, is down by approximately 20% since 2019. So I believe that their population estimate for Portland is higher than actual. As we know from their last population projections for Gerhart, between 10 and 20, they were off by a factor of 4. So our population increase was 4 times what they had projected. And that was true up and down the northern Oregon coast. I do not know what their numbers are for the other cities because they sent each city a letter. So I don't know if, again, they are well underestimating Clatsop County's population, but I think it's probably likely. So I'm working with Angelina to get a little more data as far as certificates of occupancy. And then also, you know, the trend of people making what was a vacation house their primary house. That's going to be harder for us to get. But I think anecdotally, we're able to demonstrate some of that by our fire incidents. The increase between like 19 and now is approximately twice as much. And a lot of those are medical calls. So they're not a fire, they're not necessarily a car accident. And that just demonstrates we have a lot more people living here. So if they're having a slip and fall, it's happening in Gerhart instead of in Portland or Lake Oswego or wherever they used to live. So hopefully they will revise our numbers back to where we think they should be in an accurate reflection of our population as exists. But that's something that we need to keep an eye on because over the course of a 10-year period, it makes a huge difference in the amount of, in all the ARPA funds. I mean, we received a fraction of, I won't say a fraction, we considerably less than we should have received because of Portland State's population estimate. So that is one item we're focusing on. And there've been a lot of questions about railroad right of way. So I did a little bit of research and so because there's been a bunch of kind of legal analysis submitted to the city council. So in 2014, in a case called Brandt v. United States, and the citation is 572 U.S. 93. The Supreme Court determined by 8-1 majority that right of way acquired under the various acts that allowed right of way access in the 19th century, that right of way, if abandoned, the ownership reverts back to the owner of the adjacent parcel. And so the way that right of ways work is whether it's a utility easement or a street right of way or a railroad or anything else. The city in most instances doesn't own the underlying dirt under a quote unquote road. What we have is the ability to use that road. And there are instances where mostly for roads that are platted but are undeveloped, that will do what's called a road vacation or an easement vacation. And what happens then is that the city recognizes that we're not going to improve the road or use the road. And it is returned to the adjacent owners. And they usually pay a fee for that. And it's a similar process for railway right of way. So they have that ability, and if they abandon it or don't use it for a certain amount of time, then there are a couple of options. One is a city or a nonprofit entity can acquire it for what's called a rail to trail program. And or another entity may acquire it. An example of that would be the Southern Pacific Railway line between Lake Oswego and Portland was acquired by a consortium of those two cities. And they have a little trolley that runs on it, and that's how they maintain the right of way. If they were to stop doing that, it would revert back to the adjacent property owners. So the question in the Brandt case, because as the materials were submitted, there were kind of some areas of the law that were passed in the 1920s that weren't entirely clear. For those of you that read through all the packet. So if the rail went through land that was owned federally, but then went to another owner in the city, the federal government argued that it should revert back to the federal government, not the adjacent landowner. And the Supreme Court 8-1 said, no, you're wrong. It goes to, you don't maintain the interest. And so to the extent that a public entity or a private party that no longer is entitled to no longer owns the adjacent property, it doesn't return to that earlier in time entity. It goes to the adjacent property owner. And so any actions that are taken by the government in order to recognize kind of the abandonment of that right of way and the reversionary interest to the adjacent property owner, those are what are called ministerial. So it's something so that you can demonstrate it to your lender if you're getting a mortgage, or you can basically clear the title so everybody understands what you own. But it's not actually the combining of two parcels. It's that right of way ownership interest has been abandoned. It reverts automatically. And then in some jurisdictions, they just clear it all up and that right of way is removed from the map. Clatsop County is not one of them. So if you look at Clatsop County's map, it still appears to be some abandoned railroad right of way, even though legally that would have reverted back to the adjacent property owners. So just wanted to clarify that because the materials that were provided to you stop in like 1989, and then after 1989 is when the Brandt case happened. That kind of provided clarity around a lot of these issues. And then I get to prosecute a case coming up in a couple months, and that happens like once every 3 years. So I get to put on my prosecutorial hat. So we got Chad and I are going to be getting ready for that one, but if any of you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to tell us what the case is or not?
I would rather that we not. I'm not happy that we're having to prosecute a case. I don't think we should discuss it.
Okay.
So Peter, my understanding about vacation of the railroad right of way is that each side of the right of way, so if you split the right of way down the center. If the person on the west side there did apply for 50% of that. And the guy on the east side applied for his half. And then found out that the guy on the west side didn't apply for it. He could apply for the whole railroad right of way.
Well, so it's which parcel it came off of in the first place. So if it was all under common ownership at the time that the rail right of way was established, then you're correct. Kind of the default is it's 50-50, just like a non-navigable water.
Right.
The general rule is it's in the middle of the stream unless there's a legal description that says otherwise. But yeah, the default is 50-50. And if one of the owners doesn't want to acquire to the extent that the railroad purchased it and is selling it, then the option would be given to the other in order to buy the whole thing.
But how do you, I mean, there has to be a chain of custody, for a better term. I don't know what the legalese would be for this. How do you establish, what is the process for proving who was the original owner of the property? Don't you have to go through some type of a process to establish that? Or do I just get to go down to the county with a form saying, hey, this was my property before, so here's $35 and combine these tax lots?
Well, it's like any other like fee simple property ownership thing. So there would be a chain of title that demonstrated that this platted map, on this platted map, this property owner owned X, and then in interest, whatever it was conveyed to whatever the entity is, if it's a railroad or if it's a city, because like a utility easement would be something that we would want to acquire. And it's not always clear. I mean, we had that situation where we had a pipe that nobody knew exactly what had happened with it, and we were all scrambling in order to figure out who owned it, when was it built, when was it permitted. So usually with like fee simple property ownership, it's pretty clear cut, but there are times when it isn't. So it would be a title company would go through the kind of chain of title and make those determinations. And then this would have happened prior to the Brandt case. So the Brandt case kind of settled everything, but property transactions that happened before that, there was more flexibility as far as what should happen because there was a split between the various circuits. So, yeah.
So back to the Portland State issue.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to you to know what their estimates were for the surrounding cities?
I mean, I think we all have to make an individual decision about whether to appeal or not. What I would say, and this was the point that I made to Portland State when we got into this in the first place, was that with the exception of Cannon Beach, that had a population decrease just based on the number of vacation rentals, which they have a tremendous number of vacation rentals there. They were off by like, I think between 3x and 11x for all of our cities. So like, I think that our increase was 28%, the actual as measured by the US Census. And they had the increase over the same period at 7%. So we were shorted state funds and COVID funds, but also we had done a buildable lands inventory and housing needs analysis. And because they had so underestimated the present population and then used that number to project the number forward, that's why we're going through another buildable land inventory housing needs analysis, because their numbers were so far off that we could no longer use them. So it's really important as far as workforce housing that we have accurate numbers countywide. But yeah.
If you're writing a letter of objection, I mean, does that help support your objection to know that they've been off on, you know, Buchanan Beach and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so we can between 10 and 20 demonstrate how far off they were as compared to the census. We have all those numbers and cited all those numbers, which is how we got the increase to begin with, but now they're revising our 2023 number down and then adding our growth to that lower number instead of a number that we already believed was too low. So we were pushing back on them and saying, you were low during this 10-year period, you're continuing to be low and stop it. And now it's, now they're trying to do a downward adjustment. And it's a statistically significant amount. And yeah, so we have to, we have to create our record and defend it. And I've been in touch with Dr. Al Cat, who's in charge of it. And so we'll make sure we have everything in by the 15th and then we'll see what happens. And then I'm having conversations with several members of the legislature as well, because like we can show how far they were off they were with every city in the state. And so if the numbers are that off, then is this the entity that really should be doing the estimates, I think is a valid question to ask.
Or is their methodology just flawed?
Right, and so they won't disclose what their methodology is, and so it's really difficult for us to point out where they are wrong. Yeah.
So the status now is you sent a letter back to them saying.
So we've responded that we're objecting, and then we are. I mean, there's been coverage in several newspapers about kind of this population shift to the Northern Oregon coast that we can point to. There's other data. I feel like it's really accelerated between 20 and now. And as far as people's secondary homes becoming their primary homes. So we can point to some of that. But without knowing what they used to determine that we didn't have the population, it makes it harder to create the record where we're saying, this is all the places you're wrong. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Peter? Okay. Then we'll go to, thank you, Peter, Chad, and your report.
Thank you, Councilor Mayor. Just a few things. Last month, Councilor Dana brought up a survey from the Oregon Water Caucus. And this survey is to submit the city's current and future investment needs to the state so they can begin collecting that information. Once we get them this information, the state puts together potential grant funding, not guaranteed. They are also in the legislature prioritizing projects and looking at Water Resources Division and their policies. We have begun working on the survey a little bit, but I wanted to make you aware of this because we're going to be putting some pretty serious work into this survey over the next week and a half. And the city staff, Mark and I, will be sending that to the city councilors for you to look at. And what we were going to want from you, it doesn't take a council consensus or any action by the council for us to submit this information. But with Dana's help, we want you to look at that, be aware of what we're submitting. And then if you have any feedback to what we're submitting, we'll go ahead and take that from you and update the survey. So be aware that that will probably be coming to you at the end of next week.
Are you going to make hard copy or just an email?
We'll figure out a way. I was messing around with the survey a little bit and trying to make copies of the survey itself to get to you. There's a lot of formatting issues. I'm missing Miss Christie right now because she's fantastic at that kind of format. But when she gets back, I'll get her assistance. We'll make it with something that you can read through a little bit easier than what I can provide for you right now.
When's it due?
Let's do the 15th. Also, not to talk too much about it, but the town hall yesterday, we've begun getting feedback from those that participated. There are surveys that we have received. I haven't received any of the surveys that were done online that FFA provided, but we'll be reporting back to you as we receive more of those as well. So far, it seems the surveys we've received is that the method, the meeting itself went pretty well. We asked people to kind of gauge whether or not they learned anything, and whether or not they felt like the information was valid, and they did so, and so far those are coming back positive. We had about 60 people at that meeting. We had about 30 inside the fire hall and about 30 online, maybe a few less, 27, 28, depends on when I looked at the online software during that period of time. We're also taking notes of ways that we can do things a little bit better for the next town hall. I think the technology worked pretty well with our new camera, yet we want to have, I think, some more interaction with the online folks during some of the back and forth conversations. We're gonna try to figure that out. No promises. It's pretty entailed to break groups out online and to administrate those through a meeting, to have a meeting with them. But we're gonna talk about it at least and see if we can make any adjustments. And so if you have any other, and this goes to the residents of Gearhart that were in attendance both online and at the meeting, please let us know if you have any ideas for the improvement of those meetings. That said, the next meeting for the public safety building, this is a town hall. This will be January 14th. I believe the time is at 6 p.m. again for this. And now the items that are going to be on the agenda for that day are going to be a structural engineer who's going to be on site to talk about our current buildings. And geotech will also be on site to talk about the soil sample that we had taken at the middle of last month. We had a geotech company come do a 100-foot boring. They took samples every 5 feet, and currently the geotechs are putting that report together, and we may even have that by the end of this week. So that geotech report and the structural engineering reports will be discussed on the 14th. We also talked about ways to get some more people to these meetings. It felt, it was a cold night in the middle of winter or almost winter, but we're gonna try to push twice as hard to get everybody at this meeting. And it's really down to residents, council, city staff, of even making phone calls to some folks that were positive or concerned or would never vote for the fire station. We want everybody to attend. The information that FFA and Klaus Group is helping us through is good, and I think it's very valuable. After that, yes, we do have a bit of a case that we're working through with Peter. It just has to do with zoning laws and the use of the house, so we'll be working through that. We will be closed for Christmas Day this next month or this month. And that's all that I have to report at the moment.
Okay, I want to piggyback on your report. I don't know if anyone's aware of it, someone should be. January 1st is a Wednesday, and we're not having a city council meeting that day. It'll be the 8th of January. Just so you're aware, it's going to be the second Wednesday of January. I forgot to say that earlier, but then I'm forgetting a lot of things tonight.
And also to piggyback on your comments and Peter's comments, and sorry to interrupt earlier. My comment earlier was not that I don't understand that we have to prosecute something, I just would like to make sure that it's decided in a court of law and we're not discussing something we shouldn't discuss publicly. So that was my objection, not that we're doing what we have to do or not doing what we have to do, it's just, I would be very uncomfortable discussing it in this meeting.
And it's not something we do very often. Peter, Angelina, Garrett and I, and previous planners, we were able to get through 99% of all the issues that come to Gearhart just by having conversations. It's only very occasionally we have to end up in court. This is gonna be one of those times, but
Or maybe not, I mean, it might resolve itself.
we may get that.
We always have.
See who blinks first.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, visitor section, we have none.
I did sign in.
Yeah, you should, Deanna signed it.
Visitor section, we have one person, excuse me. Good grief. No, we don't have visitor.
We don't have a special visitor to this.
No, we don't. Now we're going to go to public communications, written and oral.
Okay.
Geez, thank goodness I'm not wrong. Or I'm not wrong. Anyone wishing to address the city council concerning items of interest not on the agenda may do so at this time. All remarks will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Requests to comment electronically must be submitted by email to the city recorder at info@cityofgearhart.com no later than 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. In-person attendees wishing to speak are required to sign in prior to the meeting. Now, first of all, in the written reports, we have a letter from Stuart Schultz that is not in our packet, which will be put into the public record as soon as we get a copy to everyone. Another record that was filed with us is from Deanna Mansell. I'm sorry for obliterating your name like that.
We say it both ways.
Well, then I'm not bad.
See, either you're Norwegian or you're French, that's how you pronounce it.
Well, I guess I got a little of both in there somewhere. Anyway. We have a visitor and that's Deanna. Please, you have 5 minutes.
Okay.
Name and address.
Deanna Mansell, 2945 Highway 101 North, Gerhart. I'm just gonna briefly go over what I submitted to you guys. I have to start with the discussion about the railroad right away and the history on that. Back in like 1983, I bought this property and I've been a surveyor assistant for several years, and we discovered that railroad right of way did not belong to the adjacent parcels. When Tom Wader, my boss, did a chain of title to survey these properties, which you guys have in your file, he found that Clara Stanley, back in 1888, deeded 60 feet of her land to be used for the railroad. Okay, since 1888 and any of the subsequent deeds that were conveyed, nobody got a deed to the railroad right away. So the map that was included in your packet showed the 1921 Gelo Parker survey. He showed the railroad right away in the center line, but no one had a deed to that property. So when Clatsop County was talking about doing the foreclosure because Burlington Northern had not paid their taxes since 1978,
the property owners took the opportunity to file in circuit court to get a default judgment on that property. And when that default judgment was issued by Thomas Edison, he had the railroad right of way, my 30 feet have a separate legal description. It was a separate tract. So the tax assessor assigned us all tax account numbers. And at that point, in 1983, that land became a lot of record. And so when I'm looking at, you know, the Gerhardt zoning ordinance definitions, if we have a discrete lot or a lot of record, you're supposed to follow, you know, a zoning law, like a lot line adjustment to, if you want to vacate that line, you go through the city planning department. I got a letter from Jessica Joy a couple weeks ago. Basically, the DEQ did not want to deal with the issue of combining tax lot, you know, on the Turner property. And she recommended that it go back to the city planning department. I felt like when Lucas Marshall of the health department kind of blew me off a couple years ago and did not explain to me that the process is the property owner.
1 minute.
Okay, the property owner files a request to vacate that easement. The county gets it, looks at it, signs off on it, but then they send it to the DEQ, who, you know, stamps it approved. And so that's how that lot became one lot. But I think in the process, that the process was bypassed. I think the Gerhardt Planning Department should have been able to review this issue, and that's kind of what my objection is. So that's why I'm bringing all this stuff up, because I just think something is not quite right about this whole procedure. So hope you guys consider my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. That's quite a deal. I'm sorry you're going through that. And that's, your Turner is your neighbor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna move on. I don't know what to say to that, so
Well, it's being investigated, and thank you for your patience while they're looking through.
Well, I hope you guys can go through all the stuff that I've submitted and get some resolution out of this.
Right, I'm gonna beg you to be patient, as we're talking about, we've got a lot of things going on, and the city, you know, really needs to get the inventory he's talking about done, and there are a lot of things we're doing right now, but it's being looked into. And
Thank
you'll
you.
get a response.
Who is doing the investigation?
Peter Watson and I are working on that.
And I think Garrett's looking into it also a little bit.
all right. Next, we have second reading of ordinance 942.
Mr. Mayor, we do have Mr. Garrett on if you have any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Garrett on the second reading of 942?
I do have a question, let's see. Now, I was mostly talking to you about my questions on the next one, right?
Yes, although you did have a tree question. That had to do with the riparian area.
Right, okay, thank you for helping me. So my concern is whether or not, I know the ordinance talks about that the riparian zone is covered in its own section. Is there anything that's very clear that a permit is required to remove a tree from the riparian zone? Or is that covered in this ordinance? Because in the staff report, it implies that it's covered in the other section that covers the riparian zone.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand. So I'll try to answer, and if you have more questions after, then you can keep going. So the zoning ordinance has special sections that are relatively easy to find for wetland protections, for example, where tree removal is prohibited in locally significant wetlands. It has a section for the beach and dune overlay zone. But its riparian zone protections are actually embedded within the base zones. So we don't have a section titled riparian zone like we do for wetlands. So it's a little bit harder to find. So there's, base zones speak to riparian areas, and then another section of Article 6 of the zoning ordinance basically prohibits tree removal within 50 feet of the streams. But it's just a little bit harder to find. And let me try to pull it up. It'll just take me a moment. I'm not much of a multitasker, but I can find it for you and give you at least the section number so that you can find it yourself now or later. But essentially, this other language in the zoning ordinance, it doesn't say that a permit is required for removing trees from the riparian zone. It says that removing trees from the riparian zone is prohibited. Let me find it. Okay, so it's section 6.070, subsection 5. This would be on the 151st page of the PDF, or page 6-15, as it's labeled on the bottom of each page of the zoning ordinance. And it goes on to the following page. And in subsection C, all vegetation shall be retained within these areas. And then there's some exceptions. So that applies to all vegetation, like grasses, for example.
Except for invasives. Probably.
And noxious.
Yeah.
I think you've answered my question, so. So my concern is that a neighbor proceeded to take down a tree. It's happened twice. next door to me. They're probably the tallest trees in the neighborhood. I called Chad. He didn't know anything about it, and I feel like the tree ordinance, putting the permit process in place, part of the reason is so that the staff has a mechanism for knowing what's going on. And this won't solve that. Because the tree never should have been lifted up 100 feet by the time I called you. I mean, and yet the arborist was doing it.
I think that the improvement will be that all tree work in regards to removing a tree will be required to have a permit. Weekends, things like that, we're not on as often as we are in the midweek, so there's still gonna be an issue. But I think the raising of the awareness for tree permits will be helpful. And then I also think that, you know, it'll give us a better idea of what's going on when we're told about it. We still will have instances where people start taking out a chainsaw and going to town. And for that, we rely on calls if we have one, unless we happen to drive by. So this will be an effort in seeing how this ordinance performs over time. And what time period it is and how we report that to you, is depending on how busy it'll be. And then, if need be, we may need to make some adjustments.
Yeah, that's kind of along the lines I was thinking too.
Well, I'd like to piggyback on what Paulina just said, and she's pretty much alluding to what my major concern remains with this. And that is that, ordinances are great when everybody voluntarily knows about them and complies with them. But the problem is that we have no way to enforce this. And one of the major complaints we have against our city staff, puts our city staff in a very uncomfortable position, is when there appears to be selective enforcement. Since there is nobody to go around and patrol on weekends and other days, or throughout the year, what you're gonna end up with is in some locations where perhaps you live next to somebody who's aware of this and they're going to report it, there's gonna be enforcement, but there's going to be enforcement afterwards when there is no action to be taken except to issue a citation, unfortunately, which is then going to lead to either a penalty or court, and it's gonna tie up our staff time. And if you're living in a part of the city where people are not aware of this, you don't live next to a city councilor, or you live far off, you're gonna be able to cut trees and nobody's going to ever report you, and you are not going to be counted in this tree count. I think this is an unfair ordinance. I think it puts our staff in a very uncomfortable position, and that remains my objection to this. And again, people are already unhappy with what our staff are doing. I think if we're gonna add a task for our staff to do, we need to start talking about what we're going to remove or how we're going to afford it down the road.
Thank you for getting that back in the record again, Dana, but I think what we need is, do you have a question, Pauline?
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, if we get a motion to read this ordinance for a second time,
I move we read this ordinance for a second time. Or ordinance 942.
is there a second?
I'll second the motion. There is a typo that needs to be corrected.
Well, no.
We'll call that a Scrivener's error.
Discussion.
Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of 942, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say
Nay.
okay. Passes. Thank you very much.
And Ms. Fauna, that you can contact us, we'll look at that error. And
Yeah, it's page 4, section F. it should be of and not off. I think I have a number 2 written there too.
Oh, yes, I see that. Thank you.
Chief Park,
Sir.
you wanna go and tell us about this ordinance?
Absolutely.
This is ordinance 945. An ordinance implementing cost recovery services in the city of Gerhart.
So I can kind of address why I drafted it the way I drafted it. This ordinance, there are kind of 2 components. There's the ordinance itself. And then there's the fee schedule. The fee schedule is based off on the fee schedule that the Oregon Fire Marshal established. So it's kind of the default safe harbor for the state. We know that it's reasonable because the state fire marshal says so. And then over the next coming months, we're probably going to, well, I don't think probably, I'm going to be utilizing our subject matter experts, our firefighters in order in chief, in particular, in order to come up with the Gerhart specific set of fees. So in areas where they deviate from kind of the default rates, because the Northern Oregon coast is different than the Willamette Valley or Eastern Oregon. So we'll be bringing back a new fee schedule for you, a new Appendix A. That'll be more of those Gerhart numbers. And we're one of the only fire departments on the coast that doesn't currently have a fee recovery. This is for incidents primarily that happen outside of the city or car accidents on the highway. It's for instances where our firefighters are having to respond and it's tying up our resources outside of the district. And it's, that comes at a cost, both in terms of the use of equipment and the use of time, and prevents them from responding to other calls in some instances. So this allows cost recovery primarily for those instances where we're responding what I term like extraterritorially, so outside of the city, or for non-Gerhart residents, because the Gerhart residents are paying the fees, their property taxes are paying in, and that's true of the district. The people that live in the district, the district is both the city's fire department and the rural fire protection district, referred to as district. And then the other place, and this isn't Gerhart specific, but it's kind of a trend around the state, is there are facilities that are using first responders almost as if they're staff. So for instance, that elder care facility where somebody falls down, the person hasn't suffered an injury, but they might not have the staff to get them up and about. And so instead of staffing up, they're using our folks as staff. So if you look at the ordinance, you'll see there's some optional ones. So if there's like a facility if this happens once every 6 months, then probably not going to charge them the fee. If this is happening on a very regular basis and tied up our resources, then we are. And then last meeting, we kind of covered our county's ambulance service using some of our highly trained experts almost as default employees for purposes of bringing people to hospital. So we spent quite a bit of time trying to dial this in as much as we could. And then the next thing that we'll do is make sure that those fees are closely tuned into what our department's actual costs are. And then anything actually related to fire, Chief can answer all this question.
Yeah, so like as you said, I've come from several different departments. this is a cost recovery. This is not a money making. This is as inflation goes up, right? It's every time we roll our apparatus out the door, we're putting, $50 in fuel. This is actually gonna be a benefit to our taxpayers, to be completely honest. I've already discussed this with the district board, and as soon as this is just the ability to charge, okay? This is all that is ordinance wise. This is per ORS 478. This is by the state promotion, the ability to recover from services such as going to Saddle Mountain, such as having to put my paramedic, on an ambulance, such as a car accident, okay? On 101, that's a tourist. It goes automatically to their insurance 100% pay every time. It's used frequently in every department I've ever been at. So the district, as soon as we, as a city, because we are a city department, get approval to have the ability to charge, we actually benefit because we are not only just, we're getting the district and the city and the tourism, water rescues, things like that, things that are outside of our normal fire protection services, right, which you guys pay for your taxpayers. We can recover costs that would help offset some of the overtime that us as fire chiefs have to go to, wear and tear on our apparatus, just be able to kind of maintain the services that we provide you already. That's the purpose of the ordinance. And like Peter said, this is just the ability to do XYZ things. We will have to come to you with a fee schedule. This is not saying we can charge tomorrow, 100%, that's not it. This is, hey, by law, we have the ability to do this, why are we not? Why are we not benefiting our citizens and taking some of the burden off our taxpayers and putting in recovery that we know we'll get paid for, right? The car accident 101 is 100% paid for, right? Let's get some of those money back when we have overtime for it being 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? Does that help a little bit? Okay.
So right now, we're subsidizing non-residents. And, the most costly, again, there have been times when our firefighters have had to respond like south of Cannon Beach for rescues, and that's not cheap. And right now, our ratepayers are paying for it, and this allows us to have the people that are receiving the services pay for it instead. And again, there's a reasonableness, standard, there's common sense, there's a lot of flexibility built into this so that if someone's of modest means or if they, don't have the ability to pay or whatever, that our fire chief is able to waive those fees and not do that. There is a question, so there are 3 types of kind of decisions that most often we see in the land use context, where there's kind of the legislative, which is citywide, that would be something like a short-term rental restrictions. Then there's a quasi judicial, and that's when, fact finders are acting as a judge and they're applying facts to law. And then there's the third one, which is administrative, which is when somebody has administrative authority and they're not appeal rights. The reason that I made this administrative, which is that the appeals to the fire chief and the fire chief has final authority, is because in another jurisdiction right now, I've had to defend what should have been kind of an administrative or legislative decision through a writ of review process, which is where they file a writ of review in circuit court, and then we have to defend the decision. Those only apply to those quasi judicial decisions. So by having final authority with an individual and no appeal rights with the fire chief, that prevents us from having to incur the costs associated with what is an expensive process, because it's like any other trial with witnesses. And we talked a little bit about whether there would be some appellate board above the fire chief. We just couldn't think of any person or entity that would be as familiar with the costs and reasonableness of the services as our own fire chief, since it's his department that's providing them. And so that's why I wrote it in that way. If you guys want to do something else, of course, we can do that. I just want to prevent us from being in circuit court over a $500 bill.
Well, my understanding of that also is because this, what we're establishing is not a punishment, it's a fee. So it's like, if you were punishing somebody, yes, they should have a right to appeal and say, I didn't do that and I don't deserve this punishment. But because this is a fee that we're charging equally to everybody under like circumstances,
Right.
it's, okay,
Right.
correct.
So who's gonna be doing the billing?
Okay, so that's a great question. So all the departments in Oregon, we use what is called cost recovery billing. And it's a third-party billing company that literally has a fee-based schedule. So takes all the work off of me and Justine, right? So basically what I do is every car accident I have paperwork to do anyways. We'll just use that as the example. All I do is I send them my run sheet with that information. They bill the insurance. It's kind of like a collection. When insurance pays them, they take their, I think, do not quote me on this, it's like 6%, something like that. They take their 6%, we get the fees. End of story. It's literally 5 minutes off my back to send that in when I'm already putting it in the system. The nice thing about this company also directly works with our system. So it's just a click of a button and it gets sent in and it's end of story. For anything that, depending on what the fee schedule is, if we decide to do like a fire marshal thing, we'll have to discuss it from there. But the company, they literally work for everyone in the state of Oregon, in Washington, and in fact, across the whole United States. They're pretty reliable. And that will be involved, and I will give that information to you as well, when it comes to an actual fee schedule. This is basically just the basis I wanted you to be aware of. We have an opportunity to help our fire department just a little bit.
And are there instances in which other fire departments would be billed because we helped them, or what does that look like?
No, because we have mutual aid agreements. But, for instance, the Saddle Mountain Rescues, Hamlet charges the Parks Department. You can charge the park, basically, or the person you rescued, for said rescue because it takes a technical rescue. So, there's opportunities for that, but no, we're not really holding a quote unquote fire department because we're a mutual aid agency. There is other private entities that we could for other things, in theory.
And then, Peter, I just have a question for you. One of the lines says, whereas the fees established by this ordinance have been evaluated by the board of directors and council. We don't know what the fees are, so we can't do that.
Well, so what we've done in the interim is that if you look at the appendix A, is that we've adopted the fee schedules, standardized cost schedules for transportation route response, apparatus cost, et cetera, contained in the state fire marshal's Oregon Fire Service Mobilization Plan pursuant to the administrative rules that I cited. And so the state has already said those are reasonable fees. When we bring in our permanent appendix A schedule, so this ordinance needs to work for every time we bring you an amendment. So the state fire marshal's fees are per se reasonable because they've been adopted by the state by administrative rule. The next time and every time after that we bring you a new fee schedule, which will be Gerhart specific fees, you will have to review them for reasonableness and independently decide, because some of them may be the same as the fire marshals, but others could deviate from those amounts. So this time you guys kind of get a free pass because they're per se reasonable, but next time you're gonna have to, dig in a little bit and
I do have a copy for you
Yeah.
if you'd like. I printed out 5 copies. The problem with the fee schedule that we're having here is it's basically time and apparatus costs, right? So I don't foresee us billing anything until we do a resolution with a fee schedule.
Yeah.
So this ordinance again is the ability to do so. Once we adopt a fee schedule, then you will have numbers, you will have the ability to look at those numbers.
Right, and
But I'm not gonna do anything with that ordinance until that fee schedule is in place.
I understand, I was more concerned about the fact that it said that we have evaluated. the-
Right,
So
so-
if you think that us having the appendix A is enough to make that statement, I'm good with that.
Right, so originally, there was just going to be a blank page that said Appendix A, because we weren't going to charge any fees until we developed our fees. But that people found that very confusing, because we have to reference. Keep in mind, we're gonna use this ordinance a variety of times. The idea is we pass the ordinance once. And then I guess we're going to use some cannabis tax money coming in, because it smells like something. So,
Not me.
yeah, all right,
Yeah, I just,
yeah,
if
so,
we're gonna pass this, I just wanted to make sure we weren't
yeah, so.
passing something that.
So what I then did for this appendix A is I went to the Oregon administrative rules and referenced that state fire marshal's fee schedule. So that we would have numbers on an appendix A, and those are per se reasonable, and then when we bring you back. Our Gerhard specific one, yeah, you'll have to review it, but there was no easy way for us to meet. Our obligations under this ordinance and then be able to quickly do new fee schedules in the future unless we had the language in.
So when you do the fee schedule for Gerhart, you will show us or compare it to the states.
Yep, so it'll be as a resolution, so right now you're adopting the ordinance, and then I bring your resolution, that resolution will replace appendix A. You will approve it, literally just like we're doing now, you will have read it, you'll make your comments, you'll discuss it, I believe twice, and it'll be adopted into the ordinance. If that makes sense.
Just once.
Just one,
As
sorry.
long as you tell us also what the fire marshal's schedule is. So we have something to compare it to.
Absolutely. Like I said, the fire marshal's schedule is only apparatus and time. So it only would cover what we would charge, and we would probably use that as model language for overtime cost of, say, the fire chief having to go out on a car accident or a fire in the middle of the night. Or the cost of our apparatus that sits on a fire for 7 hours, or a car accident for 7 hours. Those would still be in our resolution, probably as model language from the Oregon. I will reference that for you. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. I can give you all the information you'd like.
Yeah, it's like 300 pages.
I printed out the applicable
The
appendix C.
condensed version.
I have the appendix C, which is 6 pages for you, which gives you the actual fee schedule. But again, I didn't want to overwhelm you. I just want the ability to have the ability to recover. And at that point, once you say yes, I will bring you the applicable numbers, and then you can decide what you would like to do with those numbers at that time. And yes, I will give you all reference material. And references. I've picked several fire departments, both locally and regionally, through the state of Oregon that have a fee schedule. So you will have at least 3 other departments to compare a fee schedule off of, based off of what our recommendations are.
Okay, so do we need any wording in this ordinance that says what she just said?
No, it's just this creates the codified scheme, and then the resolution that we bring to you will create the fee schedule for as long as that remains applicable. And we'll look at that probably on an annual basis in order to make sure that it actually represents what to the extent that we can measure the cost.
Yeah, I have a question about. I always thought of the Gerhart Rural Fire Protection District as the entities that the fire department covers outside the city. I think of it as Surf Pines and Housing. Like that. And so then, if that's true, what I just said, then I'm confused why, as we go through this, it becomes the district. Is the district the entire?
Yeah, so it is our what we consider our fire department, and when it's in Gerhart, we call it's a city department, so it's part of the city. When it is a district, that is a separate legal entity. So the district covers the outside of the city of Gerhart, but inside their boundary. But also because it's a separate legal entity, it is, the city's portion of it is in that special district as well. So it's both things, it's a department and a district, but as a district, it has other legal authority. And so we call it the district. If we want to call it the department / district, just so people understand that we're discussing the entire thing, then we could do that, but I just use district as shorthand.
Peter, I think it's really, I think to clarify this, it's a city fire department,
Yeah.
okay? All the equipment belongs to the city,
Mhm.
except for what the district has. And even that, the new tanker out there, belongs to the city. So the district contracts with the city for fire protection and mutual aid and emergency services.
So if we want to call it department / district, we can.
Yeah.
I mean, it just gets confusing to me, like, why isn't anybody from the board of directors signing?
I'll
this?
answer that question. So you have to, because I'm a city department, as Gerhart Fire, I'm a city department, you guys own me, right? Let's be honest, you own me.
Well, actually, they paid for your job.
Well, you own me though. Either
We
way,
hired you.
even if their contract ends and they decide to move to Warrenton, you still own me. I am employed by the city of Gerhart. Okay, they pay it, that's how we fund me, but I'm still a city employee, right? They contract services to us. So, the city has to adopt this ordinance. After that, they have to adopt it from you. But I can't have them create this ordinance because if I was a district, this wouldn't be a question I'd have proven to have billed services. We wouldn't be having this discussion at all because it's ORS. It's Oregon code or Oregon law that I can bill for services. If I was a district, like where I've been from, this wouldn't even be a discussion. We'd be charging for services, okay? But because they contracted us for services and I'm a city entity as Gerhart Fire Department that you guys manage and basically own as citizens, we have to create ordinance and then they adopt our ordinance, if that makes sense.
So if you guys didn't want to do this, if you decide tonight, say no, we don't want to do fee recovery, it wouldn't go to the board. It's set up, if you read it, it's set up so the board of directors and city council both need to ratify it. But they can't, if you guys say no, then there's nothing for them to ratify.
Correct.
Cause this is a city ordinance, because it's a city department.
Okay. Helps. But I will say I have asked them if they'd be willing to participate in this multiple times because of the benefits that it benefits, benefits for helping with our costs and maintenance and stuff like that. And I've got nothing but good feedback. Like they're just kind of waiting for me to get it to you guys so they can adopt it is what I've been told. So that's good because then again, you reap the benefits of the entire district, not just your citizens. Right? You reap everywhere that we cover as Gerhart Fire, you guys reap that benefit, right? Yes, sorry, sure, but.
Okay. So there's a question I had on the 4 whereas halfway through it where it says have examined, and I think it should be will examine.
So we can make that change.
Okay. Because that way I'm not what I said I was.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so does anyone
Motion to approve
Thank you.
ordinance 945, an ordinance implementing cost recovery services in the city of Gilbert.
I second.
Wait, what's your change, right?
Yeah, as amended.
And that's two amendments, correct? One amendment with adding the word department slash, right?
Yeah, I believe that's what they said. Yeah, as
And one-
amended.
And with will, so.
Yeah. Will and take the D off examine. Right beside it.
Yeah, will, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We got it unanimous.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you guys, have a great day.
That's all.
We went out to, just a side note, Chief Gregory and I went out to go investigate that smell, and it is in fact a skunk. So we won't be getting any tax revenue.
No revenue.
No.
Have an idea for any ordinance?
Did you see it?
No, but we smelled it.
You sure it wasn't somebody just walking by?
I've been hit twice, funny stories, I'll tell later, but.
Somebody down the street just pulled one out of their garage a couple of weeks ago, so.
So be careful going mom's not.
Okay. All right, moving on. Council rules. Pardon me. Planning Commission appointment. Oh, we're under new business. Is anyone wanting to comment under new business? You get 3 minutes. Raise your hand if you do. Thanks a lot, Paulina, for pointing that out. Okay. So my checklist only goes down that far. Ah. All right. At this time, I would like to appoint Emerson Bishop, thank you. I can't find the part. Bishop. Thank you very much for correcting me. I love it when those voices are there, just like my wife's. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Okay,
So, yeah, we could just get a,
Yeah.
roll call if we can, please.
a roll call?
Yeah, just, we got 3 ayes, we have 2 no, and 3 ayes, is that how that rolled out?
That was an aye for me.
Okay.
I hear.
I thought it was unanimous.
Okay, yeah, just in, just making sure.
Okay. Now, on to council rules. We had a request to look these over at a work session, right, Dana?
Yeah, I think it's time for us to look this over. I think there are a couple of things that need to be changed up tonight, but there's things we need to clarify in here.
Okay, well, we've got to have a work session for something else also. And that's, we'll have to choose a time. I don't think we need to have one in December. Does anyone want to have one right away in December? No.
I'd be up for it.
Can we do it in January?
We can reschedule for January, currently the 5th Tuesday is the 31st of December.
The day before, no, we're not doing it
Yeah,
the day
maybe.
before.
Yeah, I'd be good with this, with that January or February. I think we have a lot of meetings.
Okay,
Okay, I'll work with Mayor Smith, we'll talk about an agenda for that and then put a poll out for the councilors for availability.
I think we do need to know who the council president's going to be, though.
no, we don't until January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because our council president's no longer.
I know, but it's on every odd year in January that they get appointed. And tell me why, because we get sworn in December instead of January like normal cities.
Yeah, might be something that we need to talk about in our work session.
Well,
Maybe adjust that.
it's a charter.
Yeah.
If it's a charter, it's a citywide vote.
So there must be some sort of pro tem thing.
I think, I mean,
If anything
just,
happens.
you know, and, yeah.
We draw straws.
You wanna pro tem? I mean, by consensus, I don't anticipate anything would happen, but.
Well, thank you very much, people. I'm
Looking pretty good.
old, but I'm not that old.
It's looking pretty good. I don't know.
It would be a bad idea to.
Reason to give.
Well, you know, if it's a pro tem, that'd be just like, well. All right, Preston, you're pro tem. Everyone in favor, say aye.
Hey, I'm here. You're supposed to appoint the person that isn't here.
Yeah, well, we've got them all sitting there. So do you agree for pro tem?
I'm sorry, I honestly, I apologize, I didn't hear what you said.
I said Preston can be pro tem
Yes.
till January.
Aye.
Is everyone in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Until January.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got
It's
28 days.
Something, no, well, no, it's the 8th of January, so.
3 weeks to a process.
Well, pro tem doesn't mean you're gonna be it for 2 years. Okay, so don't worry. There,
And then
you
the,
guys,
the council rules, what if we decided we were gonna do?
we're gonna go to the work session.
It's not.
Is that agreeable to everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what we're talking about now, don't you? That's the council rules on the work session.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, I was just having a sidebar saying I would.
We were talking about the council.
right, okay. All right, council concerns. Paulina,
None.
Sharon,
I just have a question. I mean, Deanna's come to us multiple times.
yes.
And so my question is this something that the council needs to be discussing or not?
I think it's something the city is looking into, and we're not an investigative force.
There's not, and we're continuing to see what, if anything, we can do about this issue. And there are a bunch of us that have had a lot of conversations about it and looked at various aspects, and you know, there's not, so far, there hasn't been anything obvious that where there would be what I term a hook for the city. Like generally when there are two adjoining property owners that have issues with each other, it's not something that the city is involved in. But if, again, every meeting we receive more information that clarifies things. And so, you know, it's possible that when we look at this new tranche of information, that something will come to light. So, we spent, Chad spent a bunch of time on this too. It's been kind of interesting to go through this and, you know, clarify some of our stuff, which is, you know, not the county's role versus our role, and how property records are processed, some which go through us and some which only go to them. Like homeowners association documents, we don't read, they just go to the county, even if it's like a Gerhard HOA. So it's figuring out, all right, what's their ministerial role versus ours? And like, what would go in front of our planning commission, that's not necessarily binding on their assessor or county clerk or the people that are processing these things. So it's, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, I mean, I don't wanna be shirking our duties or whatever, if we should be doing something, so that's why I asked.
Right, no, I mean, if there's an obvious legal lane for us to engage in this, I mean, then I'm gonna bring it back to you and say, here are our legal options, here's legal risk, and then at that point, you guys can say, hey, we certainly want to engage, or we don't want to set the precedent of getting involved in a dispute between two property owners.
Okay. Preston,
No concern.
Dana,
No.
I just want to remind everyone, it's January 8th. We'll get it on the blog so everyone knows not to be here on the 1st.
Will do.
All right? Don't forget to come by Justine's table and sign these forms so you can be notarized. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.
I need to get my book.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate the corrections.
Sitting in the sweeter, I don't live here.
Huh?
Oh, I.
The president.
Right.
I'm kidding.
Come on. Just did?
No.
Oh, yeah. I got the interview.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I saw you.
Did you look at her license? Do you know who she is?
Do I sign up? Yep. Sign.
Did you open your card?
Didn't you want me to?
Well, it is pretty.
Have a great night.
Sign, print.
Yeah, right there.
Just that I know.
Everybody wants. Open with this.
Yes, yes.
Basically,
All right, okay,
we're
we're fine.
your rights to it. But
Let me
if
see
we
what he
want
says.
to get that.
I really haven't had a chance.
Ownership of it.
So.
No, because I had, so you had 5 years. I filed a claim on it. There's going to take, I think, people want that's the claim. That's county action. Perfect. And sign frame of view that our address, street or no, whichever you prefer, is signed up.